Out here in the Arizona desert, silence is currency. You don't waste words, you don't invite trouble, and you damn sure don't underestimate the man who lives at the end of a dirt road with a pit bull. And a past he doesn't talk about. My name's Nolan Briggs, retired Special Forces. I came here for peace, traded combat boots for calloused hands, and concrete. But peace doesn't last when vultures circle in government disguise. They came wearing uniforms, fake ones, with forged authority and real guns, thought they could scare a soldier off his land. What they didn't know was, I don't scare easy, and I don't stand down. You want war on my porch. You better bring more than a badge and a bluff. The desert doesn't whisper. It breathes heavy and hot, like it's daring you to move. That Saturday, Nolan Briggs sat on his porch with his boots crossed at the ankle and a sweating bottle of Coors in his hand. The sun was already pushing 105 degrees, baking the Arizona dirt, until it cracked like old leather. Thor, his German shepherd, dozed at his feet, ears twitching at the occasional gust of wind. Peace rare and golden. Nolan wasn't your average ex-military man. After 2 decades in U.S. Army intelligence, he hadn't just left the battlefield. He'd walked away from a world of secrets, lies, and silent wars. Now his battleground was 2 acres of dusty solitude, outside a sleepy town with no traffic lights, no HOA, and no noise. That was about to change. The sound of tires, crunching gravel, snapped Thor to attention. Nolan didn't move, but his fingers curled slightly around the neck of the beer bottle. A black SUV, windows tinted like a mob boss's confession booth, rolled to a stop just past the gate. He'd welded shut himself. The doors opened in eerie unison. 2 men stepped out. They wore navy blue uniforms with crisp white HOA patches sewn on their shoulders. But something about them didn't sit right, too polished, too staged. One was tall and lean, with mirrored sunglasses and a stiff spine. The other was shorter, barrel-chested, with buzz-cut hair, and a jaw like a sledgehammer. Thor growled low, deep in his throat. Nolan's grip loosened on the beer and tightened on the Glock, holstered under his flannel. Afternoon, the taller one called out, strolling up the path like he had a right to be there. We're from the Homeowners Association. You're in violation of Section 14 regarding unauthorized animals. Nolan stood slowly. This ain't a subdivision, and I sure as hell don't answer to an HOA. The shorter man pulled out a clipboard, flipping a page. Sir, your dog isn't registered. Also, your fence exceeds height regulations and your vehicle. He nodded toward the rusting '78 Ford, parked under the shade of a dying mesquite, doesn't meet aesthetic compliance. You've got the wrong property, Nolan said flatly. Now I'm asking. Once, get off my land. The tall one's tone shifted. We're conducting an inspection. Not without a warrant. We don't need one. Then you better start running. The air thickened. Thor stood, hackles raised. The shorter guy, shifted hand twitching near his belt. Not toward a pen, toward a holster. That's when Nolan knew. These weren't HOA enforcers. Hell, they probably didn't even know what an HOA was. And if they were bluffing, they were doing a damn good job of walking the line between stupidity and suicide. Nolan didn't flinch. His hand hovered over his Glock. Last warning, the tall guy smirked. You gonna shoot over a code violation? No, Nolan said calmly. But I'll shoot over a threat. A beat passed. Then 2. Thor's growl deepened. The shorter one stepped forward. Wrong move. From the corner of his eye, Nolan tapped a panel hidden beneath the edge of the porch railing. A red light blinked once. Silent alarm. A legacy from his military days. 5 minutes. That's how long they had until hell came in a Humvee. But even 5 minutes might be too long. The moment stretched taut, quiet, searing, electric. The tall man's smirk faltered just slightly. Thor's snarling vibrated through the dry ground, and Nolan's fingers hovered just above his Glock, like a gunslinger from an old western. Then the shorter one moved. It was subtle, just a twitch toward the clip on his belt. But it was enough. Nolan's weapon was out in a flash, leveled with steel-eyed precision. Don't, he said, his voice low, steady, final. The kind of tone that ends conversations and starts wars. The taller one raised both hands slowly. Whoa, whoa! Easy there, cowboy! Thor snapped once, sharp and close, making the shorter man flinch. The tension cracked like a thunderclap. You came here with a lie, Nolan said. Now you're going to tell me why. There was a long silence. We just enforce community rules, sir, the tall one replied. His tone had softened, trying to sound official, but his boots were pointed toward escape. We got a report. There is no HOA out here, Nolan cut in, and no community. The short one shifted again like his nerves were catching up to him. We don't want trouble. Too late. Just then, the sound of another vehicle broke through the standoff. From down the dusty road, a beat-up Dodge Charger roared into view. No plates, windows rolled up tight despite the heat. It came to a screeching stop behind the black SUV. Another man stepped out. This one didn't wear any uniform. Instead, he wore mirrored sunglasses, jeans, a leather jacket, and carried himself with the kind of confidence that screamed one thing: he was in charge. Nolan didn't lower his weapon, but his mind raced. One extra player in the game, different clothes, no markings, and not part of the original act. He wasn't bluffing like the first two. He was something else entirely. The newcomer walked toward the house slowly, his hands visible empty. Mr. Briggs, he said casually, like he'd just shown up for a barbecue. Heard you're a hard man to talk to. You've been trying to talk with guns and forged uniforms, Nolan replied. The man laughed once. Dry and sharp. Fair. I'll admit it's not the most polite knock. But we don't have time for pleasantries. You picked the wrong property, Nolan growled. Oh, I think I picked exactly the right one, the man replied, stopping at the edge of the porch. We've been watching you, Mr. Briggs. That little job you pulled in Kandahar, the intel drop in Ukraine. You're not just some old vet with a dog and a beer cooler. Nolan's jaw tightened. That name? Kandahar wasn't public. The man's smile faded. Someone's got something that doesn't belong to them. And rumor is, you might have held on to a few things that weren't in the duffel when you retired. Now it was clear they weren't fake cops. They were contractors, private off-book, the kind of men who lived in the gray and got paid in untraceable accounts. And they weren't here for a dog or a fence violation. They were here for something buried deeper, something classified. Nolan kept his aim centered. You think I have it? No, I know you do. Behind the sunglasses. The man's eyes were sharp, calculating. We can do this clean, Mr. Briggs. Or we can do it the other way. You've got 5 minutes before we stop pretending we're neighbors. It wasn't a threat. It was a promise. Thor bared his teeth. The air around them crackled with pressure. But Nolan wasn't afraid. Not now, because 5 minutes had just passed, and the cavalry had arrived. Over the ridge, a pair of ATVs roared into view, kicking up dust clouds behind them. Behind them came 2 military-grade trucks, gray unmarked, but Nolan knew the shape of them well. Private response. Friends from his past life. Friends who didn't ask questions. The contractor's head turned just as the sound hit his ears. His calm broke for half a heartbeat. Joel, Nolan said, lowering the Glock. Just a hair. Guess I'm not the only one who keeps records. The tall man on the porch paled. The short one stepped back instinctively. The man in sunglasses glanced at the trucks, then back at Nolan. This isn't over. No, Nolan replied. Now it's just getting fun. The ground trembled under the wheels of the 2 military-grade trucks as they rolled to a stop in a cloud of dust. The sun cut through the haze like a blade, casting long shadows over the desert sand. Thor stayed at Nolan's side. Tail still, ears forward, eyes locked. 4 men stepped out of the trucks. None wore uniforms. None needed to. They moved with a quiet confidence, efficient, lethal, and loyal to one man, Nolan Briggs. The contractor with the mirrored sunglasses stood still, his hand twitching near his belt, maybe debating a last move of bravado, but he didn't draw. Not now. Not against those odds. Nolan stepped forward. Let's cut the crap. I know who you are, and I know you're not here for some HOA violation or missing intel. The contractor lifted his chin. Then you know what's at stake. I do, but here's what you don't know. This land isn't just dirt and rock. It's registered under the Department of Defense's Veteran Property Protection Program. It's a sanctuary zone. Any unauthorized attempt to search, detain, or harass, especially with false credentials, is considered a federal offense. The contractor's jaw tightened. He hadn't expected Nolan to have layers of legal armor wrapped around this place. Or maybe he thought the old vet had forgotten how to fight with paper, as well as bullets. Nolan continued, his voice calm and deliberate. You came in here under a lie. You brought weapons, intimidation, and muscle, but you forgot one thing. He paused, then looked the contractor dead in the eye. This is my house, and you're trespassing. The man glanced sideways at the first two operatives, one still holding his ribs from where Thor had knocked the wind out of him, the other pale as drywall. His bluff had failed, the intimidation had failed, and now he was cornered, not just physically, but legally, tactically, morally. Make the call, Nolan said. There was a long silence. Then the contractor pulled out a small earpiece, pressed a button, and muttered, "Abort, target secured, mission compromised. Extract team now." He turned to Nolan. This won't be the last time. Nolan didn't flinch. It better be. With a tense nod, the man backed away, collected the other two, and headed to the SUV. But before the engine turned over, one of Nolan's men stepped forward. Dom, a heavy-set, quiet ex-sapper, with eyes like flint, and snapped a photo of the license plate. The flash reflected off the dust-covered rear windshield like a silent warning. Nolan turned to Marcus, the field lead. Send that to Agent Barrow at Langley. Let them know we've got active contractors breaching federal sanctuary codes. Marcus nodded, already dialing. Thor finally sat, ears relaxed, tongue out. Sensing the tension fading, Nolan exhaled and stepped back onto his porch. The Arizona sky stretched endlessly above him, the same way it had when he bought this land to get away from everything. Peace, privacy, silence. But peace had a price. One he'd paid for in deserts around the world. Now the battlefield had changed, but the rules were the same. Protect what's yours. Stand your ground. Don't blink first. Inside the house, Nolan poured himself a fresh glass of cold water. He stood by the window, watching the SUVs retreat in the distance. His phone buzzed. A message from Barrow. Received your intel. Those men are part of a black contract network flagged by Homeland last month. Stand by. We're moving. Nolan smiled slightly. Justice moved slowly, but it moved. He knelt down and scratched behind Thor's ears. Good boy, he whispered. Looks like it's going to be a quiet night after all. Thor wagged his tail once, but Nolan kept his Glock close just in case.